Alright, so today we're gonna go through like class identities of the game. We're just gonna go like through in order, and then I'm just gonna also discuss like the pros and cons about like each of their quote unquote identities. However, as Wizard buffed the 7 pips a few years back, basically every school plays the same. However, like advanced content and other stuff, they are gonna play completely different from one another or PvP. They have like all their pros and cons to each other. But this is just gonna quickly go over like just what to expect, especially because there's 7 schools in the game, and if you're new to the game, you're just gonna be like wondering like which one really matches me. So first, we're gonna start with my personal favorite, which is Storm. Storm, I really think is just like the vanilla of the game. It's the strongest hitter in the game. It's not even close. Storm will wipe out any of the other schools in damage wise. Fire does keep up a little, if not passes it just a little at the end game, but Storm basically takes over the rest of the game, if not the entire game on damage wise. Um, it If you want to speed run through the game, I recommend Storm. You will fly through the game faster than anyone else. However, the con about that is even though you go through the game the fastest, um, Storm definitely has the highest skill ceiling just because you have the lowest amount of resist and health of any school. So you will easily die if you are not prepping or taking the time on how to do something. Okay. Oh, sorry, I left that on. Okay, next is gonna be Ice. Ice is the tank school of the game. Really specializes inside shields, and that's really all. It is easily the highest resist, however, the lowest damage of any school, and it's not even close. Like, Ice's damage is pathetically low. Up until, like, you get to, like, Darkmoor, but even then, Ice just relies on shadow spells. So, it's just very rough. However, they do have, like, some of the best shadow spells in the game. And then they do pick up on damage eventually late game, however, still late game, your support school, so you'll still be working with Ice, or Storm, Fire, and Myth as your hitters. And pros, you will like basically never die. Con, however, if you're playing specifically for questing alone, you're gonna be the slowest, and it's not even close. Like going back, Ice's damage is pathetically low. Like, I think by the time everyone has like 70 damage, Ice is stuck like on 30, 40 on Waterworks, so it's really not that great. Alright, Fire is the second best hitter in the school. If you... It's the dot class, so rather than something like Storm where all your damage comes at the same time, Fire, rather, their initial hit is kind of low, and then all their damage is rather built into what comes after that initial hit, which is your dots. Um, it's very weird because like it's a weird balance between blading yourself and then trapping because your blades work on all your hits, including your dots after. However, your traps, if you only have one, work on that initial hit but don't go to your dots. So it's like weird bouncing between that. Um, Pros of Fire. There's actually a lot of pros, even though it's technically not as good as Storm. You can still quest extremely fast just because your raw damage. Actually, I think it's easier to quest on a Fire than a Storm, even though you have dodge, so it might take like an extra 1 or 2 turns to actually kill. But you have higher health and slightly higher accuracy, so that early game won't be as horrendous. It's only 5% more, but it's still better than Storm's abysmal, what, I think it's like 70%? What does Storm have? Yeah, Storm's abysmal 70% to start the game. Next we're gonna be going into Myth here. So Myth is technically the quote-unquote minion school of the game. However, I'm really thankful KI decided to move away from minions as they were really useless. Um, Quick side note, if they want to make it useful, just let you control your own minions. Let you select what they're gonna do. But Myth, it's technically a hitter school. However, I definitely see it as like a mix of a hitter and a support. They have so much util, like they can clean blades, they can clean shields, they can clean weaknesses, they can clean traps. Um, they're essentially just Storm if there was more utility. However, they do have the best 7 pip in the game. It's not even close. Orthrus just cleans the rest of the 7 pips out. However, their damage isn't as great. Health wise and resistance, they're a lot more tanky than Storm and Fire. So honestly, if you're playing solo and like you want to play hitter class, but you don't want to like constantly die, Myth is the way to go. Just because you're just super tanky for a hitter. Best 7 pip in the game, and then honestly, you can you can get through a lot of cheats just because of all your util. And then early game, when bosses and minions are spamming like tower shields, like that minus 50%, Myth can hit through because a gimmick with Myth is that you technically have 2 hits. It's kind of like fire, but all in one. So usually your hits like have like a really small hit that hits for like 70. That breaks the shield, and then you hit again the exact same spell, and then that's where all your initial like your burst damage comes from. So you essentially there's no tower shield unless they place multiple down, but it's very unlikely that multiple are placed. All right, and then we go to life. Life is the healing school of the game. Um, it's yeah, genuinely just the healer class. They have a lot of HP, actually even more than Ice. Even though Ice is the tank class, Life is technically the health class. Um, Rather than going for damage, you just kind of want to maximize your outgoing heal because you're essentially a support. However, you actually do have a decent amount of damage. I think it's slightly above Ice in balance, damage-wise. If anything, slightly less than balance, I want to say. Give or take, I don't remember the exact damage per pips. But even then, or not Ice, Life is still technically a good school if you need a hitter. Like, they can definitely hit. However, if you have one of the 3 hitter classes, you're obviously going to want to use them over Life. But yeah, essentially throughout the entire game, rather than focusing on your damage like all the other classes would, you're just focusing on outgoing heal, and then if you're questing, you obviously just go off the normal route of damage gear, Darkmoor, Waterworks, Olympus, all that stuff. But yeah, if you're going for like that life support, you're gonna have to farm like different gear from everyone else, unfortunately. So it's gonna be like out of the way for everyone else if you're farming your gear. Next up is balance. Personally, one of my favorite schools. However, definitely only play it if you're in a group or if you want to challenge like the mechanics of the game. Well, technically now that there's a balance prism, it should be easier. In the past, there was no balance prism, but um, it's in the name. It's the balance class, so it does everything every other school does all in one. However, it's not great at any of it specifically. Um, if you take spells like, I guess it's not here, but like things like Hydra, you hit with Fire, Storm, and Ice, and then Chimera, you hit with Balance, Death, and Life. So, and then you have Universal Blades that work on anyone, which is why you want to use it in a group, just because you can just get that damage going really fast for any school. While they use their own school blade, you use the balance blade. They stack on top of each other. You're in, it While the balance blade is slightly weaker, than every other school. It's one of the strongest, and then you can still enhance it using enchants, which is still really broken. So yeah, pros about the balance class, a really good support. Honestly, my favorite support to play, and it's not even close. I really like balance goal actually. Um, Con, just stay away from soloing. Some of the fights can be really difficult, especially before Dragon Spire when you get weaving. However, it's definitely doable. And then last but not least, rather than walking all the way to the school, I'm just gonna go over here because they have like a representative, you could say, death. Now, if you're looking for the PvE school, this is it. The gimmick about death is that it has heals on their hits. Yeah, so rather than say like just the icon for storm damage is just the icon and then the fist, death just has a broken heart, which means it's a drain. So you'll heal back for 50% of what you hit for. So if I were to just have cool, no damage, I hit for 160, I heal back 80. This is the PvE school, and it's not even close. Their damage is still really high. It's right below myth. Like they're you can count them as a support or a hitter. They have really good utility still. They have like things like bad juju, which gives a blade, a universal blade, two universal blades. Or sorry, that's Dark Pact. That gives the blades. Bad juju gives a minus 90% weakness onto an enemy of your choosing, which is really strong. All for like I think it's like just a few hundred HP. And it's not even close. And overall, it's just a very broken school. Not the greatest in PvP, but PvE wise, it is your go to school. And if you just want to have an easy time, honestly, I don't think death players even need to farm for like the high meta gear. I I've had to do like a few solo fights on my death. He's bought gear from the bazaar the entire time. It's perfectly fine, not even struggling, and he's in Imperia right now. So yeah, death, very broken school, and then just a problem that goes to just death and life school combined. Um, they don't get a 4 pip AoE. They get their 7 pip AoE at level 48. So it's just kind of a drag until you get to level 48. But it's really not that bad. If you're able to train a pet, you just go for a pet that can do your 4 pip AoE, or you can farm spell elements on another wizard and then pass it down and then start your game. You get a 4 pip AoE before anyone else does if you do the spell element path. So it's a very easy fix, and don't be discouraged to play death or life just because you don't get an early AoE. They are perfectly fine without it. It's just you're gonna be very slow questing in the beginning, like even slower than ice, just because they get a 4 pip AoE, and AoEs are basically the entire meta of the game. And yeah, that's essentially going through all the pros and cons of every school. Let me know if I missed anything, or if you have any questions, just leave a comment below. I'll see you guys next time. The next video should be going through the Rochambeau and what each of the symbols mean.